Welcome to the David Spisak Show. I thank you so much for joining me. You are going to be absolutely delighted today. I can say that. Why? Because I am absolutely delighted to be sitting in front of somebody, virtually, of course, who I have a great deal of admiration, love, and respect for. His name is David J. Long, and David J. Long happens to be the executive GM at the Hansel Auto Group up in Northern California, beautiful Santa Rosa, California, which is on the edge of wine country. For those of you who have not been able to check Santa Rosa off your bucket list, I'm positive that is on the bucket list of literally tens of people. Hundreds, thousands of people. If you haven't been, you should go. It's actually a beautiful, beautiful area. But David also does consulting under David J. Long Consulting, and part of what he does is he has helped almost 100 dealerships already set up what many have thought to be impossible or even unimaginable, and that is setting up a very successful, highly successful buying center. So it will help them procure used cars, help them relieve themselves of what was previously a disproportionate amount of, what would you say, reliance on auctions, right? Purchasing cars. And instead, become a master of buying cars from clients off the street, which is going to, as we know, render a significantly better outcome. So without any further ado, I want to start off first by welcoming David Long. David, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, David. It's really good to be with you. Any chance I get to spend time with you, I look forward to.
You're so kind. I appreciate that. And as you know, that feeling is big time mutual. So for everybody joining us, please take out some type of an electronic device to write notes on. If you're very, pro tech, or if you're old school, like some of us are prone to be sometimes, take out the old pencil and paper, because regardless of what you use, I can promise you over the course of the next 45 minutes or so, you are going to pick up not one, not two, not three, but many, many tremendous insights that will allow you to not just understand what's going on in the industry better, but more importantly, allow you to have your dealership, your results get better. So David, if it's okay, I want to jump right in. Is that all right?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go. I'm ready.
All right. So David, I want to know first and foremost, what precipitated, I know you've been doing the All Things Used Cars Clubhouse for probably, is it 2 years now or more?
150 weeks in a row.
150 weeks in a row. That's nearly 3 years in a row you've been doing this religiously, and he's never taken a break. So clearly, if that doesn't pique your interest, whether it's for yourself or the people that join the call, as I have many times, and others, or people listening to this podcast, if you've never done it, if you got Clubhouse, join them 6 a.m. West Coast time, 9 a.m. East Coast time for the All Things Used Car Clubhouse. And David, so was it really listening to all the different perspectives at that time, maybe in your first 20, 30, 50 episodes, that piqued your interest and at some point made you say, you know what, I can see people want it, people need it, and people need help. I'm going to take this on.
So it was when COVID was happening and we couldn't go anywhere. And I'm such a social guy. Like, I just want to be talking to industry leaders, people that have information that I want. That's why I'm always in a seminar or I'm at a conference, because I know that I'll learn if I can keep my mind open and surround myself with the right people. And then I get in a Clubhouse room and I hear you talking. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I talk to Ben Stock. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just getting better and better and better. And I thought, why not, as opposed to getting on a plane and getting a hotel room and going to a place with a mask on to try to gain information, why don't I just do that from the comfort of my own home at 6 o'clock on Fridays? And wouldn't you know that we have over 3,500 dealers that join now?
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's just amazing. And every week when I get in there, there's a topic. And I cannot tell you how many times in 150 weeks that I've left that room, come into my business, and made a change that's produced significant outcomes.
It's tremendous. And I think there's many things that's really unique and impactful about it. But I think one of them is, I don't want to use the word force, but it gives you no other option but to listen to other options, if I could
Yeah.
say it that way. It causes you and empowers you to open your brain up to other perspectives and to consider that maybe your way is not the way. Maybe it's a way, but it's not the way because somebody else out there has figured out a better way. And to your point, if you have the audacity and the guts and the honesty to listen and bring those things into your store, magic happens. Fair?
Well, it also lets me vet my ideas, right? To get feedback and really stick my flag in the ground and hold my position and all the different things that I need to make sure that I'm aligned with. It's hard for me to fight a fight with 300 people in front of 3,000 people and not be convicted in my decision.
Yes.
Right? So it really fortifies and enforces what direction I'm headed.
And
so
it's a win either way, isn't it, David? I mean, honestly, if they completely tore apart, your thesis, or if they completely caused that plan to unravel, chances are they probably saved you a whole bunch of pain and a whole bunch of time and a whole bunch of money. So they're either going to validate that it's a worthwhile, viable, maybe even spectacular idea, or they're going to help you validate or solidify in your brain. Ooh, maybe I shouldn't do that. Is that true?
It has prevented me from doing things that I, in my mind, thought were great ideas, and then I vetted them inside and heard all these different perspectives, and I aborted the mission. It has really helped in a lot of ways.
I love that. So I would love to know, in 150 plus times that you've created this incredible hour of knowledge and wisdom and great perspectives, differing perspectives. Do you know what was specifically the defining moment that made you say, you know what, I'm actually going to move forward. I'm going to take this off of Clubhouse, and I'm going to start a business. I'm going to split it in two, start a business doing some consulting work for stores, and then beyond that, helping them to actually create their own buying centers. What was the defining moment that made those things happen?
Well, the buying center consulting started 12 years ago. Actually 10 years ago. The first buy center I opened was 12 years ago. And it, with the help of some people that I hired, 2 MBAs from MIT to A/B test everything that I wanted to try. And I had no idea, by the way, what I was going to do, how I was going to do it. But I burnt the ships. I said, we're never buying a car at the auction again. We're done. We have to have cars. I have 1,100 cars in inventory. So when we did that, how do you supply 1,100 car inventory, 1,000 car inventory, if you're not going to the auction anymore? I mean, you really have to get good at private party acquisition, trade acquisition, service drive acquisition, but we'll just talk about the buy center strategy. So by having that, no other options, we're going to figure this out, and then hiring 2 guys that were really bright to test how we could best accumulate customers and transition people from private party sellers to sell into a dealer. Because think about it, they're not selling them private party because a dealer was a viable
Alert
option.
from Safari. Google.com would like to use your current location.
Wow.
Is that you or me?
I think it was me, unfortunately. So
These private party sellers, they're not selling their car on their own because a dealership is an option for them. They're selling it on their own because a dealer is the last option. Like they wouldn't even consider it. So when we created this back 10, 12 years ago, we identified that we could buy 30 cars a piece per person and generate anywhere from $90,000 to $100,000 worth of additional company gross without having to go to the auction, pay auction fees, arbitration, all the time and effort that goes into it. And it has turned out for these past 10 years to be a really incredibly profitable way to acquire inventory, which is generally everyone's number one challenge. So that's when it started.
It is, and it remains, interestingly, everyone's number one challenge, whether they're private, public, Carvana, CarMax, top 150 or a single point dealership in the middle of a rural area. They all talk about this same challenge here 10, 15, 20 years later. We were talking offline. I find it interesting and amusing to a degree, but really a little scary to a degree that, we have sales managers throughout our industry that know exactly what a top performing salesperson needs to do on a day-to-day basis in order to be able to sell 25, 30 cars, 40, 50, or even get up to where Frank Graniti or Ali Rita, Pinnacle Society, is up in that 50, 75, 100 or more. They know. Every single person in this business knows, right? And one of the biggest things that is you've got to be great at relationships, right? You've got to be able to put in the work every day. You've got to have a great process. You have to have a great regimen. All of these things. And you have to, if you're not with a customer right now that you're selling a car to, you should be prospecting. And yet there are many, many hundreds, thousands of managers that if you say, if you're not desking a deal right now, you need to be going out and finding cars. You need to be figuring out how to do exactly what you did. And so many of them will tell you, David, we tried that. We tried it for 4 or 5 days. We tried it for a few weeks. That didn't work. And I'm like, golly, you sound an awful lot like a few thousand salespeople I know. Well, what would you say?
Well, why do you think they don't do it? Why do you think there's not a buy center on every corner? I mean, one that actually works.
Well, personally, there's a very powerful word in psychology that will resonate with you, self-efficacy, which simply means your belief in your ability to bring something about. Humans will never pursue anything that they don't believe they can do. It saves our self-esteem. It saves our ego. And so one of them is certainly that, because I've noticed in all the classes I've ever been to, I've ever seen or ever heard of in this industry, I've yet to see an institute for self-esteem in the auto industry. We seem to just at times suffer from too much, like what I referred to as a disease of irrational optimism. And 2 is that if it's not our idea, we're not going to do it. And 3, if I don't believe I can do it, I don't have the right people, the right processes, I'm not going to do it. But what's your take?
Well, it's just too hard. It is too hard. Most people aren't disciplined enough. And without the right process and the right person in the seat,
that's it.
It is just, it's near impossible. That's why there's not a buy center on every corner, in my opinion.
I could not agree with you more. It always starts with people. You know that better than anybody. And if you don't have a process, I was sharing with somebody earlier, a huge group. I said, do you know how many permutations of coffee you could order at Starbucks? 82,000. So what would happen if every barista kind of just said, I'm going to do it. Listen, that's cute that you have a process. I'm going to do it my way. How would that work out? Not so well. Nobody would even know what Starbucks is today if that was the case, right? So, but yet with that process, they could hire somebody, pay them $18 an hour on the third day of work. They can make all 82,000 flawlessly. The power of process is amazing. Has it taken you 8, 10, 12 years, David, the process that you help implement at these 90 plus buying centers that you've helped organizations create successfully? How long did it take you to kind of solidify that process?
Up till today, it's taken me 12 years.
Just 12 years.
Me.
So that means for anybody that wants to compete with David, start now, and doggone it, in 2036, you can go head to head with him.
Well, let me just put it this way. 6 years ago, when I started really consulting a good group of dealers to open up buy centers, and I was in the 50s at that point of buy centers open. If you look at what it was like 6 years ago with successful buy centers, and you look at what it's like today, it has had hundreds of iterations. Things are changing. The way we approach the private market seller has changed. Where we get the private market customer has changed, and how we communicate with them consistently changes. So you can jump in the stream 6 years ago, but you're going to be in a completely different place than I am today after doing this every single day for 12 years. That's why I say it that way.
It's remarkable. You just, I'm going to pay you a big compliment, David, as I should. Dyson, we're all familiar with Dyson as a brand, right? And I love his story because, Everybody thinks of who's the guy, the Virgin guy, the billionaire.
Yeah,
That's not
Richard Branson.
Richard Branson, right? But Dyson is significantly wealthier than Branson, and he's done spectacularly well. But that all started. Many people don't realize that started with him simply sitting around in his house one day in 1989, and for some inexplicable reason, the guy could not stand one more day to see a vacuum cleaner with a bag in it. I mean, can you imagine? I don't want, if I see a vacuum with a bag in it for one more day, I'm going to kill myself. And this guy decided, I'm going to figure this out. And it only took him, guys, 15 years, just 15 years. You imagine the conversations this dude had with his wife, right? Who at some point, 100 times, she had to be thinking, what are you doing? But 15 years it took him to do that, perfect it. But what is the payoff? Benefits not just for him and his family, but for employees, for people that distribute those vacuums. So, 12 years that you've put into this, and during that time, you have relentlessly iterated because as the world changes, you reinvent. And I think that's such a powerful concept. By the way, David, I can't, in good conscience, I don't want to blow over the fact that you said something that in all the conversations I've had about used cars may be one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful thing I've heard. And that is, we burnt the ships. We did the Alexander the Great. We burnt the ships. You just said at this point, we're either getting these cars from somewhere other than an auction or we're not in the used car business. And by eliminating that bad option, you force people to figure it out, to activate their brains as well as yours. And what a huge difference that has made. It's been transformative in your store, but again, it's been transformative for hundreds of stores, obviously the people that have put in your buy centers, but thousands for used car managers across the country. So today, do you agree with me? I mentioned to you that I have long had this philosophy that you got to choose whether you're a new car franchise dealer that happens to sell used cars, or you're a used car dealer that happens to have a new car franchise. My assertion is the latter have the most fun, the latter have the most protection to be sustainably successful and profitable. Do you agree with that?
I do. I do. And that doesn't mean you have to have a 1-for-1 or a 2-to-1. It just means that both new and used cars needs to be profitable. And all too often, I don't think dealers run their departments to be profitable. They run their business to be profitable, but I don't know that they run the department to be profitable. I don't know if that's your experience, but it is an eye-opener for me.
I think one of the most stunning statistics I've ever seen in this business, and I've been a data fanatic for over 35 years studying operational data and profitability and what makes certain stores more successful. But as an industry, maybe we went off the rails a little bit too far. When these OEM incentives, when that Pandora's box opened up in 1996 with Mercedes-Benz starting that situation. But what's super interesting to me is if you just fast forward 20 years later, an industry that's been around for decades and decades and done well, by 2018, it was the first year ever NADA showed the average dealer lost $13,000 on operating income. Now that means for everybody listening, whether you're in the business or not, we all have new car, used car parts and service departments. And you imagine on December 31st or January 1st the next year, David Long gets all of his team together from his different dealerships, his new used parts and service managers. And he said, man, I'm so excited. I can't wait. Somebody tell me the number. How did we do last year for all that work put in? And they say, oh, boss, we lost 13 grand. What? We lost 13 grand. But here's the good news, boss. We still made over $1.3 million. Well, how's that possible? Well, the OEMs had that drug money out there. They had the OEM incentives. We got hard packs, we got docs, and we got all this money from the OEMs. Well, on one hand, you could say, well, we're still profitable. On the other hand, I'm not so certain that was the right way to go when I'm beholden to an OEM and reliant on them for whether I'm profitable or not. why don't we just do it on operations? So I love what you're saying, David, because again, I was just showing a store today. The reason why you have the issues is you're running an unprofitable organization operationally, and then you're hoping a pandemic, a chip shortage, an OEM incentive. It's kind of like a big sporting event. How many times, David, have you seen, oh, that ref blew the call at the end of the game? Somebody really smart said, if you put yourself in a position where a ref decides the game for you, that's on you, man. That's not on the ref. They may have blown the call, but you blew the game. Do you agree?
I 1000% agree. You know, what's interesting to me too is to see dealers invest so much money on infrastructure, on facilities and properties and personnel and advertising, floor plan, and then not expect to keep 30 cents on every dollar of gross generated. A lot of dealers out there, David, as you know, are okay with 5, 10, 15 cents of gross retained.
It's insane.
They're one lawsuit or one blip in the economy away from having to ask their dad for money.
And we're there right now, their dad being the OEM. Everybody's waiting for the OEM incentives to come back. And hey, everybody out there listening, here's the good news. They're coming back. I promise you they're coming back, because we just went right back to where we were in 2019, Back to the Future, oversupplying vehicles. We have an 80-plus day supply in the country. We have some brands at 200-plus day supply. At some point, provided we can get new car managers to stop saying, yeah, I'll take everything from you.
There's some product lines out there that have a 600-day supply.
True. 100%. I looked at one today, 472 days. Absolutely true. What are you going to do with that? You know, you've got 100-plus units and you're selling 4 a month. What are you doing with that? So
if you have a 600-day supply at an average cost of $60,000, how are you paying your floor plan? Like, how much gross do you have to generate just to pay your floor plan?
Well,
so we're in a different, my point is, we're not in the same ballgame that we were in before COVID.
So David,
we're not back to anything. We're in a place that we've never been.
So, knowing that you're the creator of the All Things Used Car Clubhouse Room, and that you've got literally, you always hear about, it takes 10,000 hours to master something. You're well past that when it comes to used cars. But I want to flip the switch a little bit.
Sure.
Because you did bring up all departments. So for service and parts, this is their kind of renaissance period, or their good times, because during the 3 years that everybody was having the best time of their lives, making a profit, for the fixed ops department, it wasn't easy. As you know, they had a reduction in units in operation. They had declining customer pay, declining warranty, declining internal. But things are shifting now. We're starting to see UIO go up, and we're seeing some bright side, some upside in fixed. And so I think that, for anybody who's really paying attention, that's one thing I know you would concur with, regardless of what your experience is in your dealership that it brought you to being a leader, you've got to spend time in fixed ops. I believe it's the epicenter of culture in a store, and it is what causes your clients to come back and buy from you. So, but let's set that aside. David, what about new cars? Should a dealer realistically expect to be able to have a profitable new car department?
In any market and in any economy, I think, yes. Would you buy a business that you were going to gamble would hopefully make a profit? No, I don't believe that anybody would do that. So there are dealers, in my marketplace, there are dealers that average $6,000 less per retail unit than I do. So there's
same
different
market,
business models.
same brands.
Same brands. There, of course, are different models of doing business. Mine is not the low-cost provider. We are not the Costco. We're going to provide legendary customer service. We're going to give somebody an experience they feel great about, but we will never be that dealer that loses money to sell cars.
Yeah, I was speaking, you'll love this. I was speaking to David Gonzalez, who's the general manager of Fletcher Jones Imports, Mercedes-Benz down south. And he said, first of all, David, same thing, literally echoed what you said. we're not the low-cost provider. He says, we will provide a better experience than anybody on earth if you're buying a Mercedes-Benz. And he said, we do 900 cars a month or so, but we do it at a higher than average gross profit. And he's in a market where you're literally swallowed up by Mercedes-Benz stores. I believe there's north of 30 of them within an hour. So I know it's possible because I see people like David, I see people like you. Other than the reality that you must deliver that extraordinary, really just a level up experience for somebody buying the car, what else would you share with somebody in terms of what it takes to become sustainably profitable and to deliver that type of result from a profit standpoint?
I think it does, just like on the used car side, it starts with the acquisition. There's still a lot of people that are just saying accept, and not just regardless of the car, the trim, the color combination, and the day supply of inventory. Like, I think if we don't become masters at stocking, we will never
100%.
fully realize our full potential, because the right car will bring the right money. The wrong car, you can't discount the wrong car enough to find the right buyer.
And we're seeing that in the industry every day, week, month, across the country, regardless of brand. The wrong car, golly, not only that, David, I think that people don't realize that when you make that decision to keep taking inventory that's slow moving, weak demand, you're literally are shooting yourself in the foot in terms of course, floor plan. It takes more floor plan, more ad expense, more sales comp to get rid of a vehicle that somebody doesn't really want. There's not a high demand for. And you got those other cars you're talking about, that takes very little of advertising costs, low compensation. You don't have to worry about minis or flats or bonuses, and your floor plan expense is lower. So these have a disproportionate positive impact on net. This has a disproportionate bad impact on net. The problem is when people don't manage their assets, there's more of these. I could show you 100 stores right now to where more than 50% of the new cars they're selling today, they lose money. And 50% of those, they're losing money, including F&I. You can't win with that game plan. And yet, I keep asking them, why are you so committed and loyal to a game plan that proves every month it doesn't work? I don't get it. What's your take?
I don't think anybody could ever make sense to me or how that could ever make sense. So, in other words, what I hear you saying is we're just going to keep taking inventory, selling them for what? By the way, a $50,000 car in inventory costs about $300 in floor plan.
100%.
That same $50,000 car is your inventory for 6 months, and your only potential profit margin on that car was $2,500. There is zero profit left after holding that car for 6 months. So if we're not strategic and incredibly, the word that I would use, disciplined. I mean, disciplined beyond compare. We will not get a profitable new car department. I don't see it happening.
I agree. And then flip over to the other side now, used cars, where you spend so much of your focus and your time. On used cars, if there was 2 or 3 things every dealer must do right now to become a great used car operator that happens to have a new car franchise, what would those things be?
Have the same intestinal fortitude and intensity on the acquisition side, making sure that there's a structured and disciplined approach to appraisal, a disciplined approach. Like at the end of the day, every dealer knows how many cars they sold. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Like they get a night report, it tells them how many cars they sold. You know how few dealers know how many cars they acquired? I would manage my acquisitions and do the same way a dealer manages their retail volume. So if every day I have an acquisition target, if I know where my acquisitions are coming from, I manage each one of those channels with discipline, I don't think I can miss.
I agree with you. I was sharing with another group that all the way back into the 90s, and people thought I was half nuts, and maybe they were right, but every month we had not just a new car target, right? Used car retail target, new car retail target, but we had a wholesale target. I gave my guys if you're not actively desking a deal, you should be balancing your new car inventory all day to put yourself in the preeminent position to increase volume. On used cars, you should be out there actively buying cars, not just selling cars. You actually have a lot more money to make money, as you said, on the buy than you do on the sell. It's just like a salesperson on average spends less than 8 hours a week in front of a customer, right? But they're at work 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's 50 hours. And you're like, okay, not even 20% of your time was with somebody buying. What can you do with that other 80% to make money buying something instead of selling something? And the crazy thing is, I've showed almost every dealer group I work with, you make approximately $2,100 more on the car you took in on trade than the car that brought that trade in. And yet, we only acknowledge the car we sold. I said, what would happen? I'd like to get your take on this, because I've been converting as many dealers as I can. What would happen tomorrow if your sales board had an X for every car that your guys sold and an X for every one they bought, every trade-in they took? Would that change their mindset in terms of understanding the value of that? What would happen if we paid people? You know, we pay people when they buy cars. But I said, why don't you, as long as they're doing 80% appraisals, that's the minimum, why don't you pay them $50 or $100 every time they take a trade and really accelerate
We
that?
do in this environment. We do.
Tell me how you do that.
Well, we pay for trade-ins, we pay for street purchases, and we also pay our advisors when we convert a customer from a service repair order to a sale.
What's the right amount to pay an employee?
You know, with 15 dealers I work, not just the group I run, but the 15 dealers that I consult for, they're in every state. I mean, South Dakota, North Dakota, Chicago, Ohio, Kentucky, Florida, Michigan, and it's different in every environment. You know, $100 is a good number in some. 200 is the number in others. Like in California, $200 gets you the fast food restaurant now.
Especially at Wendy's with dynamic pricing.
Right.
Oh, okay. So discipline, intestinal fortitude. 2, make the acquisitions a focal point, right, for everybody in the store.
Not just, yeah. When I say for everyone, imagine this. There's a look to book category, and then there's a trade efficiency category that I measure every single day, not by just by store, but by appraiser and by salesperson. At the end of the month, if a salesperson doesn't have a 40% trade efficiency, there's a real problem. The value of that portfolio of business is not the same as one that has a 40 to 70% trade efficiency.
And how do you measure trade efficiency?
Where there's a trade taken on a car deal.
Okay.
A look to book is how many appraisals you did versus how many you took in. If a guy or gal sells 20 cars, they have to have 10 trade-ins. They just have to.
I also measure something else, and I measure appraisal to write-ups, because my take is, you know, somebody could say I've got a 50% look to book, but if they sold 100 cars and wrote up 200 and only appraised 100 but had 50%, that's still only 25% efficient. I think there's another missing piece, because if you show me a dealership that's, you know, if you look at CarMax, they're appraising over 90% of the cars that come in. 85% of the cars they sell every quarter, they bought off the curb from somebody.
Yeah.
And to me, one of the things I think we really miss on, David, is understanding the psychology of the salesperson. When the salesperson says, hey, by the way, David, are you trading in a car? And you say no. Let me see. From the salesperson's perspective, did the deal get easier or harder? Easier.
Easier, for sure.
Less or more complex? Less. Do I have to worry about any heat? No. Do I have to worry about stopping the sales momentum in my process? No. Does it affect my income? No. So to your point, because you make it part of their income, you celebrate it, you acknowledge it, and you measure it, you've changed the world in your store, and you're doing the same thing for stores you're working in. For those that don't, can you understand or even blame the salespeople? I know it's important to us to get a trade, but it doesn't change their world whether they get one or not. In fact, it may make their commission go down in their mind. It may make the likelihood of them having to deal with heat go up. So, but here's what I always tell them. Here's the problem with that. The problem is for anybody out there in the country, and I'm talking about normal people. I'm not talking about people that have extra money where they're going to buy a resort home or something. But if the primary house they live in, they're not even going to lock onto a contract for another house without knowing the resolution for the current house. Do you agree?
Right.
So until you figure out my current house, Mr. or Ms. Real Estate Agent, Mrs. Real Estate Agent, I can't move. And it's no different in my brain with a dealership in terms of the fact that you have two mathematical equations as a buyer you got to solve. The one for the car I'm getting and the one for the car I'm going to let go. And anytime, to me, we have a 50% appraisal rate, that means 50% of the time they are literally becoming a lead generation service for their competitors because somebody is going to figure that math out and going to say, okay, I understand that until and unless I help resolve both mathematical equations, I can't allow, this person's not unlocked to make the decision I want them to make. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah. And every market's a little different. Here in this market, there's so many people that could have 3 cars and not, maybe because it's a very affluent area.
Yes, I agree with you.
So somebody can still make a buying decision without having to dispose their current car.
I totally agree. But that's not common. That is not the norm.
No, most of the dealers I work with throughout the country, the deal's not happening if we can't figure out something to do with the trade.
David, when somebody wants to work with you on creating a buying center, I don't know any other way to say it, but do you accept all of those applications, so to speak? Hey, David, I want to apply to get a buying center. I want to get that. I want the magic. Do you just, is everybody ready for that? Or do you say, let me slow down. Let me just make sure you can handle this?
Well, I think that's why I've had such success with supporting dealers is because I'm very selective. I won't take somebody that says, I'd like to give it a try. They're not ready to burn the boats. If they want to give 5-car Fred or 6-car Sue to be their new boss buy center agent, I'm out. So there's a sort of a playbook, and I go through, there's a series of 10 questions. Are you in? Are you in? Are you in? If it is not a buffet either, by the way.
Yep.
If it's not affirmative on all 10 of the items that are needed done to open a successful buy center, I'm just not your guy. Like if you're not willing to do this, and this, it's not going to, it may happen for you and I wish you luck, but it won't happen with my help. And then we'll start. Get this. This has happened in the past where we'll start and I'll say, remember we talked about and you agreed to X, Y, and Z. And if they're not willing to do it, hey, by next week, if we're not on this, then I am done.
You're out.
Our relationship is officially over.
Yeah. So
it just because I'm not going to put my name on something that I know somebody's going to try to do bits and pieces of and hope to succeed. So not everybody qualifies for me to help.
David, what about and I love that because the reality is if they're not all in, you've got to be out, man. It's not going to work. What about the appraisal process? How important is speed in the appraisal process today?
I think it's really important, but just one step backwards. The reason that I can be so selective is because that's my hobby. You know, you have small children. My children are up and grown. That is the only thing I do is work. Yeah. So I love doing that. But back to the appraisal process question. You know, one, I guarantee you at most dealerships throughout the country, there's not one formatted, standardized appraisal process. Every single person that's appraising the car is using a different formula and a different path to walk on. I believe that that's where the complexity comes in. Imagine if you had a checklist and you knew all you had to do is boom, 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 press submit, and you would have an appraisal and a number that you could live by. That's how easy it should be. And I believe when you don't have that and you can't walk to anybody that's in the store and say, what does your appraisal look like? And have them say, well, you know, I this and I that. No, Everybody should have the same process locked in, written, and executed on every time.
Isn't the appraisal process, I'm not saying exactly, but in general terms, if you go to CarMax.com or Carvana.com, they have a firm process. And the process is simple. Put in your license or VIN. Here's a baseline number. Now let's talk. What color? What options? Is there damage? Do you have both keys? Have you smoked in the car? They both have the same questions. And
Right.
the reality is, with an appraisal tool, an advanced appraisal tool, that allows you to get to that appraisal that fast, get the number that fast, and simply add those other elements of the process you're referring to. Don't you think that's critical today in order to be able to get customers
Without
in
question. The people in the buy center, David, I really encourage stores not to put somebody in that position that has any sales experience and definitely no manager
No
experience.
car experience, no used car manager experience. It's death.
None.
Because
Go
they
to
try to
Starbucks.
appraise the car.
Just go to Starbucks, get the friendliest person in there,
Yep.
tell them that you can help them make $100,000 a year. That's who you want.
Exactly. I could not agree with you more. Last thing I wanted to touch on was the sign behind your desk. It's behind your right shoulder. It says positivity. Why is that so front and center in your life, in your dealership, in your conversations, in your relationships?
I'm glad you asked that because sometimes people get confused about positivity. I believe I can be positively candid versus positively omitting truth, right? I think people walk around under the impression that I just need to be Mr. Nice Guy and hand out ice cream bars all day. I believe that a part of the positivity that this industry, this world, this country needs is just being kind. I mean, being kind and being candid can be one and the same.
Sure.
So I think the nicest, most positive thing I can do is to help people become the best version of themselves. And that is not always comfortable, but in my mind, it's always the positive thing to do.
I do agree with you. What would you say? I've been sharing with people for a long time. I actually think one of the most positive words in the English language is the word no. I think the word no gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
But I think if you say yes to everything, like, where's the value in that? If you say yes to every opportunity, where's the value? How are you respecting yourself for your own time? So I do agree. It's just like I think that we were taught as kids not to be greedy, but yet if you want to become the best version of yourself, I believe you have to be self-disciplined. I believe you have to have self-care. I believe you have to have self-improvement, self-development. They all have the word self in them.
Yep.
Crazy. If you don't pay attention to yourself, there's no way to get to that best version of yourself. Do you agree?
I do agree. And I think that's where negativity really overtakes. There's so many people that would rather have their team members feel comfortable than help them become the best version of themselves through the truth.
Yeah, it's just like you mentioned your kids. Their job as parents is not to be your friend. It's to be your father, your mother, to help you navigate. It's not to. I remember when we had our oldest son, Jackson, our pediatrician, my wife said, what advice would you give? Of course, I have two older kids, but I'm open always to great advice. And she said, my best advice is to disappoint them early and often. And she wasn't wrong. She's not wrong. You think you want to give them everything. I want to give them everything I didn't have. I want to give them everything. I want to make them. It's the worst thing that you could do. You want to create great humans or a feral cat. You want to create, you're right? You want to create a great human, right? So I agree with you 100%. Sometimes the most positive thing you could do is to help me to understand, how to get from point A to point B, to help me to understand what I'm doing, maybe that's being destructive in my own life or to somebody else. So I love that. And David, I love that. I had the chance to, virtually chat with your folks one time during the pandemic, which was just wonderful. But just that era of positivity, I love that it's not a marketing narrative. It's not a slogan. It's not even a mission statement. It's literally who you are. And it's who you expect everybody in that organization to be to have some type of a positive contribution, not a Disney movie, but a positive contribution to that organization and the people in it every day. Any parting shots or last words, David, as we wrap up? Just curious, by the way, speed round, first car you ever owned, what was it?
73 Malibu.
Oh, wow. Nice.
You know,
Pretty nice. I had a 1970 Malibu, canary light yellow with a green vinyl interior. It was a dream. Body rot like you would not believe.
David, this was not a nice car. I paid $75 for it. It burned more oil than gas.
But the body was, I loved the Malibu at that time. All right. Your go-to cruising song, you're taking a drive on Highway 1, you're just taking a nice cruise, or you're heading over to Napa for a nice lunch, and you can put any song on. It's a beautiful day out there in that wonderful area of the country you live. What's on the radio?
Well, I haven't turned my radio on in 5 years. I don't even know if I have XM, truthfully. So I'm listening to a podcast. I'm doing I drive for 80 hours a month, and my car is a studio, kind of like what you have there. Yep. I have microphones and cameras, and I'm just either doing coaching and consulting, or I'm talking to one of my kids.
I love
That's
it.
what I listen to.
I love it. All right, fair enough. Best book you could recommend people reading right now?
My number one book, and has been since 1989, is A Better World, A Better You by Lou Tice.
Oh, did you know that Lou Tice was a friend of mine?
As that name fell out of my mouth, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah. Lou and his wife, Diane, were two of the greatest people I've ever known. You talk about impact in this world. I can't think of a couple that I know personally who have impacted more kids, disadvantaged kids, kids that fell through the cracks than Lou and Diane. But I was also able to benefit from Lou. You probably did the same thing, brought the Pacific Institute into the dealership. Lou personally taught me how to facilitate and get certified in his course. There's a guy named Father Bob Spitzer who also ended up doing a lot of work with him. He was a Jesuit priest who ended up as the president of Gonzaga University. But Lou, that's a great book. What a home run.
Best book ever. I've read it 100 times probably.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. Well, David, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join. And I appreciate, as always, you sharing your insights. Look forward to hanging out in that great room that you've created on Fridays, All Things Used Cars. For anybody that has not taken the time, please do yourself a favor. Number one, if you go to davidspisak.com, you will find the show notes from this particular show. You will find how to reach out to David, how to connect with him, and how to connect with All Things Used Cars on Clubhouse. And David, anywhere else that you would want them to search and find you?
I'm on every social media channel. I try to stay pretty active. My whole goal, I'm 5 years away from retirement, is to leave this business better than I found it. I'm trying little bits at a time to do that.
David, to say that you're well on your way to achieving that goal would be a big, big understatement. So all I will say is I'm wishing you nothing but just great health, success, happiness, a lot of joy and love in your life. And keep doing what you're doing, because what you're doing is contributing to a transformation in the industry that we really need. And when that happens, a lot of other good things happen. We help to bring more jobs into these dealerships where you are. You help to sustain them in terms of profitability. Help them to make contributions to their community. And as you know, it just goes on from there. It's one of the best things about this industry is the collective impact that it has on the communities where they serve. So I wish you nothing but the best. Thank you for joining, and for everybody listening. I know I could full confidence that, as I mentioned at the outset, that you got a lot of great insights. Feel free to reach out to David. Feel free to reach out to myself if you want help in connecting with David. And I really just thank you for taking the time to listen. Please share this to anybody that wants to improve their used car department, because the guy that's sitting in front of me right now is the person that can help you do it today, provided, as he said, that you're all in. So with that, I want to thank you for joining, and I will see you next time on the David Spisak Show. Thanks so much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.